language delay? Let's find out. I'm Melissa, pediatric speech-language pathologist and the founder of Raising Little Talkers. And the first step to knowing whether your toddler has a speech and language delay is knowing what typical speech and language development looks like. And then I'm going to share some signs of speech and language delay that would warrant an evaluation. So before we dive into expressive language, which is what your toddler can communicate and say, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future videos like this one. Between 12 to 15 months, toddlers are very communicative, using mainly gestures, vocalizations, and babbles with some words too. They can point to draw parents' attention to the snack they want up high on a shelf, and they shake their head no when you tell them it's time to get their diaper changed. In fact, typically developing toddlers use 16 gestures by 16 months. And if they're not, this is a good goal to work towards. The gestures your child uses now depend on what has been modeled for them, but a few common ones include reaching, pointing, shaking their head no, clapping, waving, and showing you an item with their hand outstretched. Before 15 months, toddlers typically use gestures in response to an adult saying something like bye-bye and then they wave, but now at 15 months they're starting to use gestures on their own to communicate. They're also now able to do some of the hand motions to those familiar songs and games that you've been singing on repeat, like Wheels on the Bus and Peekaboo. And if you've been modeling sign language for your toddler, this is the fun age where they start to use those signs independently and spontaneously to communicate, rather than just imitating you or signing when you say the word first. Toddlers between 1 and 2 also imitate the environmental sounds they hear, which includes sirens, animal sounds, or a car horn, and this develops into the imitation of words. Between 15 to 18 months, we see toddlers imitating words spontaneously. These words will be approximations, which are simplified versions of words like ba for ball and wawa for water. And if a toddler is not imitating words often, this skill needs strengthening before toddlers can be expected to use words on their own. Toddlers typically say their first spontaneous word between 10 to 14 months, and it's a word that is modeled often, like a name for a caregiver, mama or dada, or a favorite object, or da for the family dog, or ma for milk. A toddler's vocabulary will grow to between 10 and 50 words by 18 months, and their speech sounds will still be developing, so you can expect those simplified versions of words that I just mentioned before, and those still count as words, by the way, even though they aren't said perfectly. As long as they're used purposefully to communicate, consistently and independently, they count. The early developing vocabulary of younger toddlers is made up of mostly nouns, so the names for important people, things, and places in their life. Some toddlers will use long strings of gibberish called jargon, which is a type of babbling. True words will start to pop up in that jargon until over time, the jargon fades out and the true words take over. By 24 months, a toddler should be using between 50 to 300 words and say more true words than jargon. Between 1 to 2 years, toddlers start asking questions, an early one being, "What's that?" which might sound like that, or an approximation like da or dat. When your toddler asks this question, it's an excellent opportunity to model pointing, label the item, and talk about it more. Toddlers between 2 and 3 years old can ask simple where and what questions like where cookie for where's my cookie, and what doing for what are you doing. And they can also answer simple what, where, and who questions. Between 18 to 24 months, toddlers start to imitate short phrases like bye bye dada and mama open. Similar to single words, a toddler will imitate a variety of two-word phrases before they use them on their own. By 24 months, toddlers are using two-word phrases spontaneously. Remember, at this age, toddlers are using at least 50 words, which is typically a great number to start combining together in a variety of ways. By 24 months, most toddlers have experienced a language explosion, which is the term used for the developmental period where they begin to use new words regularly. A parent might describe this as their toddler using new words all the time. At this age, most toddlers are understood by a familiar listener, so a family member who's familiar with their speech 50% of the time, and 25% of the time by an unfamiliar listener. Between 2 to 3 years, toddlers are relating their personal experiences, so they'll tell their parents about events of their day using words and short phrases. For example, if your toddler got hurt, they might try and explain to you what happened with a few words, like pointing to their Band-Aid and saying, "Owie," or using a short phrase like bike, fall down. If under 2 years, those words might be mixed in with jargon. And at this age, it's still too challenging to answer an open-ended question like, what did you do today? But when given a choice like, did you ride your bike or go on the swing, your child can tell you. By age 3, most toddlers are saying between 250 and 1,000 phrases. For example, if your toddler got hurt, they might try and explain to you what happened with a few words, like pointing to their Band-Aid and saying, owie, or using a short phrase like bike, fall down. If under 2 years, those words might be mixed in with jargon. And at this age, it's still too challenging to answer an open-ended question like, what did you do today? But when given a choice like, did you ride your bike or go on past the age of 2? A limited number of consistent words or word approximations, so the majority of words sound different each time the child tries to say it. For example, the word fish might sound like bish one time, then shiff, then sif. When a toddler has a sound or a word preference at 24 months old. So this is also known as a default word. The child might say eh for everything or use the duh sound for every sound in a word. Difficult for you, the parent, to understand your toddler at 24 months, or difficult for an unfamiliar listener to understand your toddler at 36 months. High frustration levels surrounding not being able to get their wants and needs met, which results in challenging behaviors like biting, hitting, throwing, and so on. Dependence on bringing a caregiver over to a desired item or hand-leading them as a primary means of getting their needs met between 24 and 36 months. No back and forth conversational turn-taking by 36 months. Loss of babbling, speech, or social skills like eye contact at any age. Now, if you're feeling worried that your child might have a speech and language delay, getting support early is the best thing you can do for them. We know that the earlier a child gets support, the smaller the gap in skills and the faster they catch up. Consulting with a speech-language pathologist is always a great idea to get a sense of whether a full evaluation might be needed or not. If you're looking to help your toddler at home, check out my free workshop where I teach you actionable strategies to get your toddler